Hey there, my fellow lunatics, and welcome to Dakon's Madhouse.
Are you struggling to figure out how to progress through Corekeeper's vast array of gear options as you play through the game? Well, struggle no more. Today we're going over melee build progression. I'm going to show off 3 builds, one for early game, one for mid game, one for end game. Now, are all the options I'm showing here the only options for progression? No, absolutely not. But they can give you guidelines for what to keep an eye out for and help you plan how you want your build to progress as you level up. A quick caveat before we begin, the character I'm using to show off these builds has 100 in every skill and has eaten all the permanent health food buffs, so if your hit points or your damage aren't exactly the same as mine, that is probably why. Let's go ahead and get started. So the first build I'm going to show off here is an early game build. It is designed primarily as a damage dealing build, although it does have a little bit of defense in it. Let's go over some of the details. Obviously, I've been using the iron armor for all of my armor pieces because iron armor is the best armor in the early game and is absolutely what you're going to want to go for. I've gone with the grub egg necklace because of the bonus to the physical melee damage that it provides. However, there are a bunch of other necklaces that can work just as well. You've got the Fang necklace, which adds life on melee hit as well as critical hit chance. There's the Ammonite necklace if you're interested in a little bit of defense. You can always craft yourself the Copper Cross necklace if you just want to boost up your critical hit chance. From the ring standpoint, I've gone with the Clot ring in one slot because of its life on melee hit. I've also gone with the Larva ring because of its bonus to max health, provides a little bit of a defense boost, and when you're in the early game, you haven't normally eaten all of the permanent health food buffs, so your hit points are generally pretty low. Alternatively, the Ring of Rock is also really good, same for those defensive purposes, can just really give you that little extra boost to keep you alive during the early game. I recommend the Lantern when it comes to your Lantern slot. If you use the Pumpkin Lantern from the Sawin event, that is also perfectly good. It provides some health regen. This Lantern provides some extra max health, which is the main reason I've gone for this one. Since we are in melee, having that extra health helps. I also wouldn't expect you to have it leveled up to level 13 like this one is. It's actually, I'm going to be using this Lantern in the mid-game build as well, and that's why this one's been leveled up. When it comes to the bag slot, Gorm's Stomach Bag is great because of the extra health that it provides, plus it's something that you get really early in the game, and it's frankly the best bag this early in the game. And finally, on my offhand slot, I've gone with the Swift Feather just because it is really easy to get and gives you that extra dash ability. If you found the Rift Lens, that one also works really well. Pretty much at this point, anything will work well. If you want to use a shield in this slot, the shield also works really well. Now, my weapon of choice for early game melee is the Battle Axe. It is the best melee weapon, especially this early in the game. However, there are other good melee weapons that you can use as well, including the Iron Sword. So really just grab the weapon that you feel has the fastest attack speed and does the most damage, and that will be what you're going to want to use during these early game fights. For the early game, when it comes to your pets, really, I recommend any pet. There's no pet that jumps out as best in the early game because there are lots of things that can help benefit you from a wide variety of these pets. The Owlux is great because it buffs you, but the Fanhair, the Subterrier, and the Embertail are also really great because they defend you, especially the Subterrier with his threat abilities and threat generation. Those work really, really well to keep you alive in the early game. Now let's talk about the mid-game. Now what do I consider mid-game? To me, I consider mid-game being the first 3 outer biomes. So if you have beaten all the way up to Raakar, you're still in the mid-game. But once you start to get onto the Hydras or onto the Core Commander, that's when you're reaching the end game, in my opinion. So I kind of went a slightly different route with the mid-game build here, and I've kind of copied another build that I have done in the past with a little bit of modification. This is kind of a defensive build just to showcase the versatility of melee, as you can go offensive or defensive very easily with this build. So with this one, I've gone with the Snowman hat, which provides me with a boost to my max health and my armor. This can be acquired from the winter events. And then I have the Paladin harness and the Paladin pants, both providing me with good armor and dodge, as well as critical hit chance, which helps out a lot. Lantern, I've still gone with the regular lantern for the maximum health, and I've got the Scarlet Shell backpack, again, for the maximum health and the armor. As you can tell, this is defense focused, with max health and armor being the big priority. The polished Scarlet Chunk necklace also gives me some armor and some dodge chance, and this thing is craftable, which makes it easy to get your hands on it. However, if you don't want to go with the polished Scarlet Chunk necklace, there are other necklaces that work well. The Fusion Chuck necklace is also really good for both defense, and it has that life on melee hit, which is really nice. And then you can always go with the Ancient Gem necklace if you've got one, because at this point in the game, your mining and your melee get a little bit more intertwined with each other. And if you combine the Ancient Gem necklace with the Ancient Gem ring, then you will also get that extra 13% mining damage added as melee damage as part of your set bonus. And that can really help if you're trying to go a little bit more offensive with your melee. Speaking of rings, I have gone with the white glass ring for this build because of its max health and because of the huge dodge boost. However, the white glass ring is a little hard to get, so I can understand if you use something a little bit different, like an easier to get item, for example, the Ring of Rock, which when leveled up to level 13 provides a pretty decent armor boost. And you also can go with the Sky Ring if you're trying to be a little bit more aggressive, because this one gives you that critical hit chance and that boost to your physical melee damage. Even though I have used the Paladin harness and the Paladin pants and everything for this more defensive build, you can go a little bit more offensive in your build with, for example, a leveled up Scarlet set, because that'll give you a boost to your critical hit chance. Or you can go with a Solarite set, which gives you a boost to both critical hit, melee attack speed, and most importantly, it's got a lot of life on melee hit damages. So this set can be really, really good for you if you're going for like life on melee hit, or you're just trying to give yourself a little bit of a life steal kind of build. When it comes to offhand in mid game, it's actually a little bit more limited than I would say other builds are. You could keep using the Swift Feather, or you can switch over to Azios's Dash Feather. I, however, have switched over to the Sentry Shield at this point, because the Sentry Shield is really, really useful, and its 30% chance on block to basically deal the damage that was dealt to you is really helpful from a good damage reflection standpoint to give you a little bit of an edge. Now, my weapon of choice for this mid-game build is the Rune Song, because the Rune Song really is a great sword. Despite what it kind of looks like on paper, some people say, oh, the Rune Song's not all that good. That's not true. The Rune Song is a really good weapon, and it gets better as you level it up. So spend some time upgrading it to really take advantage of that. But the 10 life on melee hit and the chance to increase your attack speed really makes this sword very, very useful, especially during the mid game. Now, however, if you don't have the Rune Song, or you don't want to use it, there are a ton of other great melee weapons out there. You could level up the Battle Axe and just use that instead, because frankly, the Battle Axe is, in my opinion, the best weapon in the game. It can be used from the start when you get it all the way up to end game. In fact, as we switch over to the end game build, you're going to see I'm still using the Battle Axe for end game. Again, at this point, I don't necessarily think that pets are something you really need to worry too much about. If you want to switch over to the Owl Lux at this point, you're definitely not going to go wrong. But having some of the other pets around as well during this time is still useful. We're not in endgame yet, where having an Owl Lux or a Moth or one of the pets that buff you matters a lot more. So you can still get away with using some of the early game pets if you want to. For endgame, I've gone with my critical hit build that I've made a video on earlier, because it is a really solid endgame melee build. You've got the Atlantean Worm Helm. You've got the Ninja Garments for those extra critical hit chances. I've got the Orb Lantern because that mining damage really makes a difference at this stage in the game for your melee damage. Got the glass bead necklace for that extra critical hit chance. However, you could go with the ancient gem necklace just leveled up, as long as you also use an ancient gem ring instead of polished gold spike rings in both slots. Now you can still use the polished gold spike ring in one of the slots if you prefer, or you can use something else like the Atlantean worm ring for some extra physical melee damage as well as life on melee hit, or level up the clot ring all the way to 19 for some really good life on melee hit bonuses. For your offhand item, I chose the concealed blade because of its bonus to its critical hit chance. Again, this build that I'm going for is mostly crit based. Got a 70% crit chance and 330% crit damage before I eat any buff food. By the time I've eaten buff food, I'm looking at closer to a 95 to 100% crit chance. And once you're always critting, well, that makes a big difference for your damage. With our bag, I've chosen Morpha's Bubble Bag, again for that mining damage boost, which also helps our melee damage. And my weapon of choice is the leveled up Battle Axe. But again, at this point, you're going to find that there are a lot of good melee weapons. The leveled up Rune Song works really well. The leveled up Crystal Spear is great. The leveled up Galaxite Dagger or even the Ritual Dagger are also really good if you prefer dagger builds. But I love the Battle Axe, and I think it's the best weapon in the game, so this is the one that I've chosen for this build. When it comes to pets, at this point, I highly recommend the Owl Lux for your end game, especially an Owl Lux that has critical hit chance boosts and or a lot of triple trouble boosts. If you can get an Owl Lux with 5 triple troubles, then you're going to be in really good shape. Same if you can get one that has 4 or 5 critical hit chances, and you can replace any of the ones that aren't critical hit chance with like critical damage or triple threat, like I've done in this case where I have 3 critical hit chances and 2 triple threats. That works really well also. And you may find yourself asking, how should my skill trees be progressing throughout all of this? I recommend for the melee build, obviously you're going to want to push toward Miner's Strength, which gives you 10% of your mining damage added as melee damage. So you're definitely going to want to push toward that on the mining tree. On the running tree, you can be pretty versatile. Anything that improves your damage or improves your dodge and movement speed capabilities is really useful in the running tree. On the melee tree, I would say your progression is going to want to be something along the lines of focus on getting fast and furious first, then push your way down into stubborn fighter and grab building anger eventually, as well as when you're getting toward the end game, you're going to want to grab that strength of the ancients. Ultimately, with your melee combat, I recommend being at about a 30 in your melee skill by the time you drop the Great Wall, being at about a 50 to 60 in your melee skill by the time you kill Raw Akar, and then having your melee skill maxed out before you go up against the core commander. Your vitality tree also kind of works the same way, where you're going to want to have those same rough skills maxed out by the time you reach the core commander. And I also think that Desperate Fighter is pretty good. So if you find that you're always hurt, then maybe don't go with Strong and Healthy with its boost at max health, and instead go with Desperate Fighter for its boost at low health. Or if you really don't want healing potency, which may not be necessary for you, then you could go with both Strong and Healthy and Desperate Fighter. Though either way, I do recommend staying alive because it can be really, really helpful for you. But if you do want to sacrifice that one because you want to have healing potency, you can sacrifice staying alive in order to get Desperate Fighter or Strong and Healthy. No matter what, you want protection from the Ancients. The other trees don't really matter as much. On the Magic tree, the True Sight for the extra critical hit chance is helpful. On the Gardening tree, getting Thorny Weapons for that extra critical damage can be really helpful. And if you want to push forward to Potent Poison, then you can do that too. You're just going to want to remember that if you're fighting a boss and you don't have an ability to poison them naturally, like you're not using the Poisonous Sickle or you're not wearing a Druidra's Ring, then instead what you're going to want to do is place a piece of poison slime on the ground so that that boss will walk over it at some point while you're fighting, and that way they'll get poisoned and you'll do that extra damage. Melee does a lot of damage. It also has really good tanky defenses and life-stealing capabilities, making melee one of the most versatile options when it comes to your builds. There's a lot that you can do with it that you can't do with other builds. So I recommend seeing what you've already got gear for, or seeing what your general playstyle is, where your weaknesses are. If you find you're dying a lot or you're struggling because you're always having to heal, you may want to consider defensive builds or a lifesteal build, because those will help you out a lot. If you find that you aren't having to worry so much about death or healing, then go aggressive. Go with a high melee damage build. Go with a high critical hit chance build. Go with something that's just going to max out that damage for you so that you can focus on that instead. And again, because of the versatility, if you find that you're having a little bit of both with your problems, you can mix and match your melee build to be a little offensive and a little defensive, and it will still work really, really well.
And there you have it, folks. I hope you found this video informative and helpful. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button to help give the video a little bit of a boost. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and click on the bell notification so you don't miss any of my regularly released content. But we have more. If you want to support the channel a little extra, you can become a channel member to get exclusive membership benefits like early access to my videos, exclusive members only content, a members only Discord community, and more. So thank you all to my current and future supporters. Without you, this wouldn't be possible. Thank you all for watching. Stay happy, stay healthy, and above all, stay crazy, my friends.